Hello everybody, Kelly Rice here, but I write under my pen name K.M. Rice. And I hope my background is somewhat interesting today. I'm filming in a different part of my room. After spending the better part of 15 minutes moving my chair and camera around different parts of my room to try to find a spot where this side of my face was not completely blown out by the sun, even though I've got curtains up, because newsflash, I am white. And my camera's pretty old, so it can't handle contrasts very well. I wanted to start this vlog by sharing something exciting with you guys. Last week, I received my contributor's copy of the book I lived in New Zealand to help Daniel Falconer write, called Middle-earth: From Script to Screen, Building the World of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Are you ready for this? Do you see how big this thing is, dude? Look at that. And it's heavy. I'm not kidding. This is like 7 pounds. I should weigh it to see just how heavy it is. So here you go. My name is not on the cover, unfortunately. I like to joke that Peter Jackson stole my byline because he wrote the foreword. But if you look right here, this is a lovely title page. This book was published by Harper Design, by the way. And what a workshop. So here we go. Middle-earth: From Script to Screen. That's me. K.M. Rice. It's me. So, very exciting to finally, I was there at the end of 2015, so we are coming up on 2 years now since I wrote this. Unfortunately, you know how my brain works, my regular viewers. That means that I'm looking at this going, I wrote it really? Okay. Because, once it's out, dude. But, yeah, it's amazing I can write series, huh? But it's incredibly rewarding to be able to hold this book in my hands. And I think I'm going to have to put up, once I have a chance to look through it more thoroughly, because obviously when I was working on it, I was just doing a writing and research portion, so it was just all words. The images weren't there yet. And of course, there have been things that were added in the 1.5 years since I left the project. So I'm going to have a thorough look through this, and I will probably do a special vlog episode just to show you this book. It is already available now in New Zealand, so if this is something you just can't wait for, then order it now through What a Workshop, because you will also have the opportunity to have some really cool hobbity pieces of art. These were created by Daniel Reeve to look like little flyers and things like that you might find around the Shire. And I believe the offer is still available, that if you order this book now from New Zealand, you'll be able to get your own little packet of hobbity goodness like this. But if you're like me and you're in North America or the US, we have to wait until November 21st for the book to come out. Don't know why they're staggering the dates other than having it release around Black Friday-ish for the holiday season. But yeah, this is a hefty tome. It reminds me of Hogwarts history. I just had to say it like that because that's how Hermione says it. Well, not how Hermione says it, how Emma Watson says it, because when Emma Watson plays Hermione, she has these strange pauses in mid-breath as she speaks. But I'm not going to get into that now. So, it's a wonderful book. It smells like a con. The good part of a con, like the clean part. And it's great, so we'll have more on that later. But I've mentioned it several times, and it's exciting just to see it physically and to see my name attached in there somewhere. So, I have one more little announcement, and that is that I am working on getting my Patreon up and running again. And the problem is when I first set it up, I didn't realize that every time you post, people are going to be billed, which is not cool with me. I was setting it up with one-time rewards, like if people wanted to buy this one thing, okay, you pay for it, you're done. You don't have to pay every time. So now I've gotten rid of all that, have a fresh start, and if you find that you enjoy these vlogs and that you're learning something and that you feel like you want to give back, I put a hefty price on it, $1. So if I'm gonna still be uploading them for free on YouTube, don't worry about that. However, if you want to support me, you can go to my Patreon. I'm gonna put the link. I'm doing this, looking at an empty screen, but I'm gonna put text there and editing, and I'll put up the link, and you can go there and support me for $1 a vlog. And all that means is every time that I make a vlog, or more than likely every time that I remember to actually post the vlog to Patreon, at the end of that month, you'll be charged $1. You know me, I'm not gonna go buck wild and start posting a vlog a day. So far I think I've got 30, so if I had done this at the start, you would have, over these 2 years, you would have been charged $30. It's doesn't add up to that much, but the idea is that you get several people who are like, hey, yeah, this is great. I'm learning a lot of what you learned in grad school for top dollar, but I'm learning it from you for free, so here's a freaking $1 for you! That's the idea. And then if a lot of people are like, I've got $1 and I've got $1 and I've got $1, then all of a sudden I've got $5 and I can buy toilet paper. Not that that matters for this vlog though. Because you can't see my lower half. You don't know if I'm like wearing a diaper or if I poop my pants or anything. Because you can't smell it either. But this all does go back to the beginning of this, when I was talking about the fact that my camera's old and it's not that great. If I maybe saved up enough money from, you know, these videos and things like that, then I could purchase a new camera. Just so you know, I'm a Virgo. I get not strict, but I get very, gosh, what word am I looking for? Very dedicated and adamant about how my money that I earn for particular things, where it goes. So if you're giving me money through this vlog, I'm not going to take it and go on a vacation. If I wanted to raise money from the public for a vacation, I would tell you it was for a vacation. I guess scrupulous. Maybe scrupulous is the word I'm looking for. It's just, most of you who are watching this are writers as well. I'm a writer too. I understand we don't have much money, so that's why I set the price point at $1. Other people would say do it at $5 or do it at whatever, and yeah, overall, over a year or whatnot, that doesn't actually amount to too much, but if you're like me, then I would have the impulse of like, yes, I want to support this person. Wait a minute, how much would that total out to be? Do I have that? Whatever, so that's why I wanted to put it really low and just see what happens from there. Because a lot of the time I have viewers say, hey, I learned a lot, this is great, how can I help support you? Of course, the #1 thing is to buy my books. Especially if you purchase them directly from me through my Etsy, then I get a much higher royalty, and I'm happy to sign them for you. I've noticed a new trend of people who are asking for me to write, not obscenities, but like write like mean things to them in my inscriptions, or like pretend that we're old friends, or, you know, fun things like that, and I love it. You guys are my fellow creatives, you get it. So I'm happy to do that for you, and another great way to support me is once you have a book, and you've read it, is to leave a review in as many places as you can, especially if it's a good review, because I'm a one-woman show. I don't have anyone championing me or helping me with my career. It's all me. I'm my own manager, publicist, marketing team, and sometimes I actually find the time to write as well. So, and film these vlogs, edit them, all that jazz, dude. That's how I feel sometimes. I just feel like I've diversified so much that I'm spread really thin and it is very hard to focus, so I have to make lists of like things to do. The newsletter, the Patreon, the vlog, the this, the that, and just try to pick as many things as I can tackle at once and go from there. So that's part of why these vlogs don't come out on a regular schedule, and I always feel guilty about that. But it's because I'm just like up in the air all the time with all the different things that I'm working on and that I'm trying to produce and get to you. So those are two great ways to support me, buying my books directly from me. You can buy them from Amazon too. You can buy them other places as well. I'll get a royalty from that too. It's like $4, I think, if I sell a book for $12.99 on Amazon. What else can you do? My Patreon. And other than that, I've mentioned this before, I have a Facebook group and a special mailing list called the Wildling Warriors. And those are my men and women who are willing to, they want to know, you know, my news first, and they also are willing to then, for example, my Darkling audiobook's out now, so those are people who, in exchange for giving them more exclusive content or hearing stuff first, they will then, on their social media, help me promote it and just, you know, help. The idea is to help spread things by word of mouth rather than like a vast marketing strategy or whatnot. So there's that, and there may be another crowdfund in the works. So if you are also looking to support me and none of these things sound like something you want to do, keep your eyes peeled for that, because when I do a crowdfund, because I have a series that may be about to launch next year, more on that later, I might need $1 or $2 to help get that off the ground, because I really want to do that as best that I can. And so keep your eyes peeled for that. So those are ways to help me. Buy my books, donate $1 for a vlog. I also have videos of me reading various excerpts from my novels, and those are like $10. I don't know. If you really want to see me read The Revelation of Ritz Crackers from The Country Beyond the Forest, my short story and poetry collection, if you want to hear me read a chapter from The Wild Frontier, the first chapter of Darkling, or a short story called Awakening, which is very Keatsian if you're into romantic language in terms of the literature movement, not a romance novel, though there is a little bit of romance in there, then message me wherever. I'm all over the place, and you can just check me $10 in PayPal and I'll send you the link. I don't know how else to go about that, so I'm just pitching it here off the cuff. I don't have cuffs, I'm just saying it. And there you go. If you find you aren't sick of me already, you can hear me read my work. That, and yeah, crowdfunds. So those are great ways to support me, and I really appreciate your support, guys. Oh, and these videos too. Like, if you find a video particularly helpful and you want to share it with someone or on your social media or whatever, then the more clicks, the more the algorithm is engaged on YouTube and Facebook and all those things, and then the more likely it will be to be suggested to other interested in people. And not only will you be helping other people who might find this vlog helpful, but also I will get like literally 5 cents more in ad revenue. These are real numbers, guys. I'm not like hamming it up. These are real numbers. Unfortunately, it's a hard world out there, man. But you gotta scrape it together however you can, and when tax time comes around, boys, it's a nightmare. But that's not till April. So, finally, on to today's question. In my cup here I've got some Cinnamon Dolce Starbucks coffee, which is actually from those little Keurig pods. My sister got it for me for my birthday last year, not knowing that it was in the little Keurig pods, but even though it's a waste of packaging, you can actually still use it, even if you don't have one of those fancy-dancy machines. You just puncture it open, pour it into a filter, and drizzle hot water through, and there you have it. See, I can teach you all kinds of life hacks. Alright. This question is from Simon Halford from the UK. He says, have you ever had a writing project that you had to put on hold due to life being life, and then come back to that project months or even years later, only to realize that during that period of time your personal views have shifted and are not reflective in what you were writing? Do you try to continue writing as you were? Do you salvage what you have and replot? Or do you start over from scratch? That question immediately, Simon, brings to mind my short story and poetry collection. For like the 10 of you who have actually read it, look, again, truth, folks. There isn't a big market for short stories and poetry, but I published mine in case you wanted them. So it is called The Country Beyond the Forests, and it's named after its titular short story. Not that it's titillating. It's a little titillating in parts, but that's the titular short story. that short story is a piece of historical fiction about two young people in Transylvania at the outbreak of World War I. And it covers a portion of their lives because I randomly got intensely fascinated with, well, you guys, if you watch this regularly, you know I have a fascination with the Great War, but with that particular region and the role the Hungarians played, and how the Great War in many ways was an excuse for certain countries to invade other countries and for there to be ethnic cleansing and all kinds of strange, dirty deeds as tensions were rising in the old world. So it was a fascinating, probably absolutely terrifying time to be alive. I think any time around the Great War and the Second World War leading up to it, especially in Europe. Really scary stuff. But anyway, that's a tangent. Simon, to get back to your question. I bring up my short story collection because most of those were written when I was not a college freshman, but when I was, let's see, I would have been maybe a sophomore through when I graduated and post-graduated. When I mean graduated, I mean my second graduation. I was in college for 8 years. It took me 5 years to earn my Bachelor of Arts, in part because I had 3 minors and I switched my major. Overly ambitious. And I also then got my Master of Fine Arts. I entered grad school at 23 and got that. So, yeah, 8 years of college later, I was obviously still writing. So there's a handful of short stories in there from a more recent time period. But when I was putting together that collection and looking over my old work, I definitely had that impulse. And these were, see, it's a little bit different because these are pieces that I had, for the most part, finished. A couple times there were things that needed to be addressed from comments from my professors or from other students that I hadn't revised because I just hadn't revised those stories yet, and I had to consider that. But it was a trip to look at them and to see that glimpse of who I was. And I did have to make that decision because there were pieces that I thought, oh God, I could do that so much better now. Or why was I so interested in that angle? I should take it and actually do X, Y, Z. And then I had to tell myself, now wait a minute. What are you putting together here? Are you trying to put together something that stood on its own enough to not only get me A's, but enough to entertain my fellow students and such when I was writing it? Or am I trying to put together something that reflects me now? So I ultimately decided my goal was to keep it relatively untouched unless it was something glaring. I thought it's better if, because, calm down, Kelly. When you're writing something, when you first started, even if you don't finish it, because your question was kind of about unfinished projects, you have an intense passion, you have a flame burning within you for that story, or that subject matter, or that character, and you're imbibing that piece with that. Now, life happens, as you said, you walk away, year, month, whatever time later, you come back, and maybe that flame has shifted colors a bit, maybe it's burning something else, but you still want to work on that piece. Well, it's hard because in my particular case, I realized that if I were to modify the pieces of old, the short stories of old, and update them to where I was at currently, I felt like they would lose some of their authenticity. That being because there's a tendency when you look at something that you've written, and like I said, look at it and go, I can do better now, or I can rephrase that, or I can do this and that. Sometimes what you're actually doing is rewriting for the sake of rewriting. And that's kind of where your own inner editor needs to kick in and question your motive. Sometimes it's completely merited and you had a sentence that you're like, dude, that could be cut into and made way shorter and much more fluid and all that. But other times, yeah, the impulse is to move something along into a different direction or with a different theme or with a different energy than how it was originally written, and that is where you have to pause and say, how much am I willing to risk losing the magic? because that flame that you imbibed in that original piece is still there. Just because it's not new and dazzling and bright to you anymore doesn't mean it's not going to be for a reader. I find this is true in rewrites of all kinds. So I've talked about my upcoming Afterworld series, the first book. I've lost track of how many times I have read book 1, Ophelia. And now when I look at it again, and I'm going to look at it again relatively soon here, I find myself coming across sentences and starting to change them just because I have read them so many times in all of my all of my edits. And I have to stop myself and go, no, that was a sentence you were really proud of, you felt perfectly captured or evoked what you're trying to evoke, and now I have the impulse to change it just because I'm like, I'm bored, I've read this before, I'm going to make it something new. So that is where your inner editor has to come out and go, wait, halt, stop. In some sense, this story, what you've got on the page is a time capsule, and leave it there. Because no, it might not be fresh to you, no, it might not be the shiny bauble that caught your eye now, but it was then, and you need to leave it imbibed with that fire and that magic. So I realized looking at my old short stories that I could totally revamp them. However, that would create them something different than what they were originally intended to be. And if I felt like they had been a success at the time that I wrote them, then other than a few minor tweaks, what was the point? I didn't see that the risk was worth the reward in terms of shifting the tectonics of the story, shifting anything big, any of the heart and soul. So hopefully that speaks to your question a little bit. It's more of an answer about editing than anything else. Now that said, that was for finished works. There are 1, 2 or 3 books, I think, that I've started and haven't gotten past the first 10,000 words. And I consider that all part of the writing process. They're books that I still intend to write at some point. One, I kind of mentioned in, I think, one of my last 2 vlogs, that it's a heavy subject matter, so I found myself only able to work on it for small amounts of time without it emotionally affecting me and making me feel icky, which, it's hard because you have to do that, but at the same time you have to consider your own well-being and take a step back when you need to. But that story, I find that the crux of the story still entrances me and fascinates me. That's why I say I still want to write it, even though I started to write it and stopped. Would I stick with exactly the same vein of inspiration that I had when I first began it years ago? Probably not. I would do my best to retreat into my imagination and hunt through the dark corners and find what that original spark was and foster it and see if I could breathe it back into a flame. But if I couldn't, then I would look at it and say, what fire wants to burn here? And I would bring that into it. So it wouldn't necessarily be updating it, but it would be, okay, this is a story I still feel like needs to be told. I still feel like I am the person to tell it. I am not as interested in exploring the aspect of it that I had been in the past. That doesn't mean that that aspect needs to be deleted, but just maybe you realize the focus needs to shift onto a different character, a different plot line, whatever. I think it's really important to listen to that voice, because often what I think that is our imagination rebelling against tropes. So it's not necessarily, I mean, it can be that your source of inspiration has shifted and that you want to bring to life something slightly different than you originally did, and that's great too. But sometimes I find that it is our subconscious actually negating a trope that we didn't realize we were perpetrating through our work and saying, no, this is another avenue that is unexplored. In the other one, it came to you easy. Sometimes I'm a little wary of things that come to me easy, because, especially with character names, I often find that I'm like, I don't know where that came from, like, it just came to me, it's great, where did that, oh, it's from that TV show I used to watch. You know, things like that. And because you never really forget stuff, and I think sometimes your brain's like, here, this, we already know this, just take this, it's familiar, just use it. And, which I'm not saying that you can't recycle names from other fictional characters, but I have to always pause and be like, wait a second, where are you getting this from? When it comes super easy. And other times, though, it's coming easy because you have unlocked your access to that subconscious part of yourself that is just your imagination speaking directly to your conscious brain and telling you, right, tell this story. So, yeah, be cautious, but at the same time, again, that's just part of learning to find your voice and part of learning to self-edit is you have to follow these whims. And it won't be until a little bit afterwards that you might look back and go, I got a little off course there, or, boy, that voice, she led me in a completely different place than I thought I was going, but I like it. I like that place. So that's why I think it's important to, when you do go back and look at an old work, to have that, the ability to quiet yourself to the point of listening for what surfaces from the original piece. And it's also psychologically always very good to remember that that original piece is not going anywhere. You can copy and paste it into a fresh document or handwrite it all again if you want, and you can chop it up and delete it and alter it as much as you want, and that original vision that you began months or weeks or years ago is still going to be intact and be whole and unharmed. So really, you're not doing any damage. And I've put that into practice. I hope I've mentioned this before, with all of my books. If there's something I'm cutting, I just copy it and paste it into a document called Cut from Ophelia or Cut from the Watcher. And I don't really think, unless it's a plot point that I shifted in the book and wasn't ready to write yet, I don't really think I've ever actually gone back and been like, oh, my dead darlings, and read through all the stuff that I've cut. But at the time that I'm doing it, it helps me feel like I did not just waste. I didn't waste that effort, I didn't waste that prose, I didn't waste any of that. Which, come to think of it, it might be beneficial to go back and look at that stuff, because those could be little moments in the story where your imagination was saying, dude, you just made me think of something really cool, and let's put it down, because we might forget it. And then you say, this has no business being here, and you cut it and paste it in another document. Well, maybe later you'll return to that and look at it and go, no, it didn't have any business there, but that's still good. That's going to inspire, snowball into a whole nother story, or, give birth to something else within the work that you're on. So, I know that this is kind of wishy-washy advice, because what I'm telling you to do is listen to the madness. Listen to the voices. Learn to quiet yourself enough to not only hear them, but you have to build the confidence to follow them and to recognize when it's led you down a path that kind of leads to a rock wall and you go, oh, never mind that little bit of inspiration about maybe they have romantic tension and I didn't intend on that. I got really excited and I wrote a few paragraphs or pages or chapters and then realized that feels gross and weird and makes the characters seem like people I don't know anymore because I was forcing it and I was writing it because it was easy because it's a familiar trope, and all of a sudden my work, which is writing, got easy for me and that's why I was tempted by it, and okay, cutting all that out. That's part of the process and it's not wasted. It's never something wasted. I mean, I believe that any situation, even if it's negative, if you learn something from it, it ultimately then is not negative. So we do have a tendency to be like, but I invested in that, I took the time and energy to write it, but you also have to let go and let be. So you need to listen for the voices and follow them and explore them and open yourself up to the experience and just let yourself relax. Just trust in your own creative nature, trust in your own wildling spirit, which I know for a lot of creative people is much more difficult than it sounds, because a lot of us are riddled with insecurity. A lot of us are afraid to even show something that we've created to someone else. And I'm not necessarily at that point anymore. I used to be. Oh, I used to be petrified when people would read my stuff. I would go cry about it. but you develop more confidence and thicker skin the more you do it. And it's just like anything in life that you're afraid of. The more you expose yourself to it and take those risks, the more you do it, the easier it will become. And so if you're having trouble following the airy voices to where they lead, to quote Keats, Endymion, sorry, then just know that it's just a matter of time and experience, and just keep doing it. I mean, I've been writing since I was talking about my short story and poetry collection. There are a few poems in there that I think that I wrote when I was a teenager. I don't think any are from high school, but I was a teenager when I started college. And I looked at them now, and it didn't matter that I was 18 when I wrote it. I'm like, that still captured something pretty, that I can still connect with. I'm keeping that. So it's just a matter of, I'm realizing I have a bunch of headroom because I'm slouching. It's just a matter of practice and doing it and seeing it through to a point where you're okay with it, where you're comfortable with it, and it'll get easier each time, and you'll learn to trust those voices more each time, and you will be led down false paths, but they're not really false, are they? Because that was a part of your imagination or your subconscious telling you that this is an idea you need to look at for whatever reason. It might be that you needed to look at it and examine it completely before you could say, yeah, this isn't what I want, and cast it aside. So Simon, I hope that helps your question. I hope that answers your question and helps you, rather, is what I meant. I'm getting really distracted now because a bunch of people just started talking very loudly in my house, and I'm wondering what's going on. So I'm going to sign off for today. So from me, and Middle Earth from Script to Screen, I wish you all very fond farewell. As always, feel free to subscribe. Please keep the questions coming. And yes, if you like me, you could give me $1. Thanks!